Imagine being so disconnected from what made your country successful that instead of celebrating success, innovation, and value creation, you literally said billionaires flat out shouldn't exist. Today, a Nomad rebuttal to just that. I came across this article from Rebecca Ayers in Teen Vogue, of all places, where I generally get most of my policy advice, that says billionaires should not exist, and here's why. This op-ed argues that every billionaire really is a policy failure, basically saying that if your country allows people to build businesses so successful that they achieve $1 billion net worth, you should consider yourself a failure and basically run off and punish yourself. That's ridiculous. And if it's your first time here, I'm Andrew Henderson. I'm the founder of Nomad Capitalist. We help those nasty 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors, sometimes even the 9 and occasionally even the 10. They're really disgusting swine. Legally reduce their taxes and prepare a plan B so that when Rebecca Ayers takes power, you don't have to be stuck in your high-tax country taking whatever she wants to dish out. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. So here's what she says why billionaires shouldn't exist. In a fair society, there would be no billionaires. Bernie Sanders say they shouldn't exist. And Elizabeth Warren sends mugs of their tears. I'm going to get myself one of those mugs, actually. I'm talking about billionaires and making the case that an economic system that allows them is immoral. And so what we already have here is a person who's so detached from reality that they believe that no matter if you change the lives of hundreds of millions of people, listen, I'm not a Jeff Bezos cheerleader. But you know, Amazon is used by people all around the world. I mean, how many people get their media, get their stuff? I mean, stuff is shipped to their door. They have decided, based on market forces, their life is easier buying books, buying quinoa, buying whatever it is from Amazon and having it shipped to them. The market has decided. People should have the choice, right? Don't we want people to have an easier life? Don't we want people to spend less? We want people to have more options in life. Well, he did that for so many people. Now, you don't have to agree with everything he did, but the value created. I mean, at what point when you change 100 million people's lives, hundreds of millions, you don't get a buck or two apiece? Now, he's obviously worth well over $1 billion, but what is the value? Should we all be focused on changing people's lives for nothing? Even the aforementioned Bernie Sanders, the guy has 3 homes. Listen, I have homes. I'm not denying that, but I'm not sitting here telling you that I'm doing it for free. He's acting like he's doing a public service, and he's making plenty of money in the process. So how about someone who creates actual value might have 3 much better homes? So every billionaire is a policy failure? Well, I think not. She says we've arrived at an obscene inequality crisis, which you could argue is just kind of a value creation crisis, but okay. In which wealth is concentrated in the hands of a powerful few. I also push back on this in that, like, we start to lump in not only billionaires, people don't really know the difference between someone with 20 million and 20 billion. I really don't think so. By the way, there's people with $20 billion. There was a guy who passed away not that long ago. The guy flew economy, all right? So this idea that every billionaire's got a yacht and a jet, many do, not all of them do. Plenty of people who have $20 million or who have very high incomes wasted on all kinds of flashy stuff, and they live above their means. And so, quite frankly, I really don't think that the average person can tell much of the difference. Because I remember hearing someone in the dialogue back in the global recession who said, I don't even know he could spend $250,000 a year. So you want to talk about total disconnection. How do you spend? I'll spend it today. I don't actually do it. I live a much more conservative lifestyle, but I can very easily find a way to spend $250,000, not in a year, but before lunch. And so there's no understanding, right? So they think that the guy with 20 billion and the guy with 20 million are the same, and then they treat you because you have some business that makes a few million bucks a year. Sure, you're doing well, no doubt about it, but you've built it from zero in many cases, and they act like you're the powerful few. They really do it. The average person does not know the difference. And then they act like you're ordering around senators with your 20. No, you're not. At the cost of crippling hardship, precarity, that's a good word, and compromised well-being for the many. Another issue is they act like because you created a business that helped people, which is why you have money, that somehow it's your fault other people aren't doing well. When in reality, especially in places like North America, and especially in the United States, successful people give away a decent percentage of their money to causes that are much more effective than the government. When a single billionaire can accumulate more money in 10 seconds than their employees make in 1 year, while workers struggle to make the basic cost of rent and medicine, maybe because of your terrible policies, which created high inflation and screwed up the supply chain, then yes, every billionaire really is a policy failure. Maybe they are a policy failure, but perhaps we should start blaming the politicians. Perhaps we should start blaming their graft, their inefficiency, their stupidity, rather than saying, let's play the jealousy game that someone can accumulate more money in 10 seconds. So what? This entire crowd, everything is about, if we impose this tax, we'll bring in $100 million a year. Great. A lot of things would bring in $100 million a year. You can commit a jewel heist and bring in a bunch of money. Doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean you should do it. So what if someone makes more money in 10 seconds? Listen, they make more money in 10 minutes than somebody living in the Central African Republic. I don't see them, turning in their Kias. So what does $1 billion look like, she asks. That's a good question. Most of us would consider a multimillionaire to be extremely wealthy. See, we're just the same disgusting swine as Elon Musk. $1 billion exists on an altogether different scale. Oh, okay. If you want to imagine what it looks like, there's a visualizer she links to, which compares bundles of $100 bills to show how a million stacks up to a billion. What is the point of all this? What is this? Why is this effective if someone legally earned a lot of money? Because what? Because it looks like a lot? So what? It's a mind-bogglingly large sum of money. Great, to get your mind less boggled. So let's try to make it meaningful in day-to-day terms. If someone gave you $1,000 every single day and you never spent a cent, it would take you 3 years to save up $1 million. All right? So here's the ultimate entrepreneurship lesson that I would tell people is, all right, how do you create $1,000 of value? What can you do to help someone make more than $1,000 that they'll pay you $1,000 for? Okay? And the law of business is really very simple. Business, in my mind, is the great equalizer, right? When I was a kid, I wanted to be in business. And I think part of it was because I wasn't going to be a singer, I wasn't going to be an athlete, I wasn't going to be anything. But okay, I'd like to have some success, I'd like to have a comfortable life. And I happen to enjoy business. And yet, it's not that hard to figure out. Unlike becoming a great singer, you can just figure out, okay, how do I create $1,000 in value? And then once I do that, how do I 10x that? And then how do I 100x that? And then how do I grow it more? So this idea that her entire mindset is just waiting for someone to give her $1,000, and then she won't spend anything because she's the poor little victim, and then she'll save $1 million. How about we figure out how to create $1,000 the way Jeff Bezos did, Elon Musk did, everybody successful did, and then be like, all right, great, how do I do that 1,000 times? And people like that don't think that. They think of everything as a zero-sum game. They think of everything as it just comes down from the sky. Politicians in Canada are saying now, money doesn't grow on trees, we've got to go find it, right? So she says if you wanted to save $1 billion, you'd be waiting around 2,740 years. Except you wouldn't be waiting around 2,740 years if you found a way to create over $1 billion in value, and that's what people paid you to solve their problems for them. Because there's a lot of problems in the world, and I bet a lot more of them are created by her and her favorite politicians than by people you know. And so she shares a calculator that you can share it with and says the accumulation of extreme wealth depends on other systems such as, oh, here we go, exploitative labor practices, other people who sign up for a job and go to work. I guess if you're in Europe, like you're in Portugal, and your employer messages you at 4:01, and you're part of the new LinkedIn crowd, you're fainting at how you're literally dead. Someone messaged you at 4:01 because it's now illegal in Portugal. But what are these exploitative labor practices? Really? Are we working in lithium mines? Are we pulling things out of the ground? What? No, you're showing up in office and you're angry you can't leave at 4:01. All right, tax breaks. Because heaven forbid we incentivize things that increase the economy and create jobs. Because, by the way, the goal is no longer creating jobs. That's for other countries where I live, where people actually want to create jobs. In the West, it's just why don't you just give it to us so I can sit writing my articles for Teen Vogue and accomplishing nothing other than being a star on my YouTube videos, because I am only a YouTube influencer. And loopholes that are beyond the reach of most ordinary people. By the way, I don't know that I ever had any loopholes being successful in the United States, right? I mean, this idea that everyone's a billionaire. So how does a billionaire become so wealthy? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez explains how the ultra-rich can be seen as beneficiaries of an unjust economic system, because that's, her entire operation, where she says billionaires don't make money, they take money. It's impossible to have that much money without profiting off of other people's lack of it. Really? That kind of shows what their entire mind is. Their entire mindset is win-lose. Somebody wins, somebody loses. The people who have the money are win-win, but they'll never understand that. They will never understand that, and so they'll never get it. Even if individuals are only implicated discreetly, the capitalist class, maybe I'll get a sweatshirt, the capitalist class of 2022, generates profits upwards by denying workers a living wage, engaging in, but do you want to know why this is why I don't hire anybody in the United States. I don't want to accidentally hire, what's her name again? I already forgot. Rebecca. Yeah. I want to make sure I don't hire Rebecca and being called engaging in exploitive labor practices. I choose to hire in places where, like, the Prime Minister sends me a commendation for hiring people and paying them much more than the average. Rebecca would just say I'm engaging in exploitive labor practices. I have money. I should just give it away to everybody. Just, here, take it. Take more of it. Get it out of here. Directly ensuring that, what else are we doing that's terrible? I'm losing track. Ensuring that medicine and healthcare costs remain high. Let me tell you. Let me come clean. If there's one thing, If there's one thing I've been doing all these years, behind the scenes, the thing you don't know about, I've been secretly plotting to make sure that medicine and healthcare costs stay high. This has been the top of my agenda. Because, we're all like, I don't even know. Or lobbying for even simply benefiting from favorable taxation. Yeah, listen, if you don't want to give Rebecca and her cronies half of your dough, you are simply benefiting from favorable taxation policies. How about this? How about they don't need any of your money? How about some countries take zero? So how about every penny they get is them benefiting from your hard work that they get to waste? Wealth, she says, is able to be accumulated via close proximity to power, because I know, like, nobody in power where I'm from. I don't know any senators or anything like that. With corporate connections leading to elected office, or merely allowing people to use their influential status to set the agenda according to their own interest, known as a plutocracy. Well, at least we finally come to the conclusion that the U.S. isn't the best country on earth. Or rule by the rich. If I have to be ruled by somebody who's never accomplished anything, or ruled by the rich, I'll take the rich every time, by the way. Listen, like that Mitt Romney guy who's got the perfect hair, the perfect teeth. He seems like a relatively affable fellow. Put that guy in charge. I'll live under Mitt Romney's plutocracy anytime you want. It's no coincidence that Donald Trump's landmark 2017 tax cuts were driven largely by big business. By the way, the tax cuts were not everything they were. I mean, people paid more to those tax cuts. You don't hear about that. And they helped the billionaires pay less than the working class for the first time. No, they didn't, by the way. Right? Because if you drive on the same roads and bridges that I do, and I pay $1 million and you pay $73.50, I am paying more. Does the rate matter at a certain point? If the goal is, but you're benefiting from the services. Yeah, listen, I just paid $1 million. That's a lot of roads. She asks, is it possible to be a self-made billionaire? It's really a question of whether anyone can be self-made, and that is the entire narrative in the West, and why you should have, at the very least, your second residence, your second citizenship, and Robert Kiyosaki's plan of where can I get in 3 days. In his scenario, it was if things just go to hell. In my scenario, it would be laws can get passed pretty quickly. And so when you're living in a country where lots of people are pondering if anyone is even self-made, that's your cue that if you have enough money to where she's talking about you, have a citizenship in a country where they do believe you're self-made. They do. Yes, of course, we all benefit from other people's efforts. Doesn't mean we're not self-made. Why do we never hear this about Beyonce, for example? She's not self-made. Is it really all her talent? Is it all, really nobody helped Beyonce get there? Why is it only business people? Why is it never athletes? Why we don't hear about, like, some guy's baseball coach when he's in 8th grade? Why don't we hear about that? Why is it only business people are not self-made? Perhaps because they're jealous. They've never figured out how to make any money. And because they realize this is the only chance, they're also not talented athletes or singers. I don't know. And she says, this is the language of a larger myth that justifies wealth inequality. The self-made myth conceals the multitude of barriers to wealth accumulation. Yes, because I literally have a brand new client now who lives in North Africa who makes $7 million a year at 29 years old, and he didn't even have the benefit of these amazing U.S. schools where nobody learns personal finance. And so how did he manage to do it? How did all the people we have from Morocco, from Egypt, from Thailand, from Brazil, from Colombia, how do they make millions of dollars a year? Oftentimes at 22 years old, 25 years old. How do they do it? Because it's so hard to make money these days? Maybe the problem is the society. The notion that you're poor, you made lazy or bad choices. Maybe you did. Maybe you didn't, work smart. I don't know. Listen, if you make, Warren Buffett talks about, if you had a punch card and you can only make a few financial decisions, you'd have to be very particular about the ones you made. Most people would make bad financial decisions. And yes, I blame the school system. Most people's parents probably aren't teaching them properly. I've seen that. I was fortunate enough, my parents taught me how to be entrepreneurial, good with money, what have you. And so, no doubt, people are making bad choices. It's not always their fault. It's probably the government's fault and a lot of other people's fault. But if you gave people a punch card and said, hey, listen, you only need a few punches to become fabulously wealthy, right? You only need to make a few good decisions. Start a business and just scale it up, or make a great investment and just write it out and don't be emotional. How many people would do that? The average person wouldn't. The notion that a billionaire has worked hard for every penny of their wealth is simply fanciful. But it's not just about working hard. It's just the average median salary in the U.S. is $34,612, which, by the way, shows just how really little value the U.S. is, if that's the median salary. My goodness. But even if you tripled that and saved every penny for a lifetime, you wouldn't accumulate anywhere close to $1 billion. Yes, because it's just an orders of magnitude. You know what? I may never accumulate $1 billion. Why aren't I complaining about it? Why don't I complain? Why aren't you complaining? And so she goes on and on and on and talks about her 704. I mean, this is just really long. Oh my goodness, this is long and painful. But if billionaires didn't exist, wouldn't we all be worse off? Yeah, we would be, because nobody would be creating so much value, or because it would have all been taken at the point of gun by people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who, by the way, was talking to some liberals the other day. They're like, yeah, we moved to Europe. She's pretty liberal here, too. This notion that like all these liberal politicians in the U.S. are somehow like very moderate in Europe, nonsense. And so, yeah, you would be better. You would be worse off without billionaires. And so how do we keep extreme wealth in check? I think that one solution is start looking at things as a win-win. I'm not saying let's keep people that, I'm just putting my foot in the head of the little guy. This is what I love to do. No. Why don't we actually teach other people how to become successful? And then you know what? We'll have, just as we have with the Great Recession that was induced by COVID, why don't we actually allow more people to learn how to create a small business, how to become freelancers, how to go into a trade and open their own business? Why do we keep funneling people into university, which has raised prices to the roof even since I was there, creating this massive student debt that then becomes a political issue to cancel it? And instead of forcing everyone into these basically indoctrination camps, where unless you're a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, it's largely rubbish, why don't we encourage people with financial education of how to become successful on their own? And then you won't have people being exploited, because they'll say, listen, I have a skill, I can run my own show. I don't need your job. And so if you want me to take your job, I've got to have some pretty good conditions. As an employer, I'd rather hire someone who has some options, because I want a good employee. I want someone who's actually going to help. I don't want a fleet of stooges. And so we keep extreme wealth in check by helping more people become wealthy and by distributing that, but that's not what they want. The reality is, it is people like this that want people to stay poor, because they need people to vote for their jealousy-minded policies of how they should take your money. But if you're the person that she's writing about, then you will want to have money outside of the country reported legally as required by your country. Second residence is a place to go. Maybe you set up in Dubai. Maybe you get a residence in the UAE. Pop in one day every 6 months, keep that thing active. Maybe you get a citizenship in the Caribbean. You find a country that knows they need to be competitive, because her country does not need to be competitive. They figure, hey, where are you going to go? You're not going to leave. So show them that you have options, that you have a place to go when these policies come into place and they don't want your wealth to even exist.